Today we're going to explore the Southern Rhone Valley and all of the tiers of appellations that we find within the region. So we are looking at predominantly Grenache and Syrah, but each classification is going to give us a very different style. So we're going to start with our Cotes du Rhone, then we're going to look at Cotes du Rhone Village, and then look at the single crus that are named, and we're going to look at the most famous, which is Châteauneuf-du-Pape. So I'm going to start with the Cotes du Rhone. So here we have the Cellier des Dauphines Reserve Cotes du Rhone. This is actually a really nice label. It does tell you that it's Grenache and Syrah. They aren't usually that kind.
They're not usually that helpful.
No.
They don't want to help.
No. So what we're looking for in this style, for when I purchase a Cotes du Rhone, I'm looking for this really juicy, very fresh, not necessarily simple, but an easy drinking style.
Yeah, something that's not too challenging, something that's not too tannic, something that could go with a whole wide range of food or no food or another wine.
Absolutely.
You could pair it with another wine. I do.
Yeah, exactly. This is great for wine number one, and I'm going to pair it with wine number two. What I like about this one is it does have a little bit of that juicy, kind of candied note. There is a little bit of this herbal, kind of garrigue, rosemary, thyme, kind of herbal note.
It's also, not to be too facile about it, but it's grapey. It is a grapey wine. There's no doubt that it's made from grapes, as well as all the other things. Well, not all wine is grapey, but it's got it's very fruit forward. It's not trying to be anything it's not. I don't know if there's been like carbonic maceration, because you do get that candied note that's certainly not in a lot of other Rhone stuff.
But in terms of like what we're looking for, juicy, fresh, easy drinking. There's some concentration of flavors. It's not necessarily simple, but also great value, right? Cotes du Rhones, we're looking around that $20 price point, and you're getting a great quality wine for $20.
So many regions across France have just rocketed in price. The Rhone Valley, especially the Cotes du Rhone appellations, they've really kept it down in price. So they're still pretty much where they were about 10 years ago. You can't say that about Bordeaux or Champagne or Burgundy.
And one thing to kind of note on this label too is it does say reserve in this appellation. That's just a nice marketing term.
Yeah, it means there's a wine that's worse than this somewhere.
All right, so we're going to turn to our next kind of tier. So I like to think of kind of these hierarchies as a little bit of a pyramid. We have our not mass produced, but larger production of Cotes du Rhone. And then we start narrowing the focus onto these single villages or a collection of villages. And these villages are sites that are a little bit better suited. Sorry, you're thirsty. I better pour wine for you.
I like to think of the pyramid as like Wednesday wine, weekend wine, then date night at the top.
That's great. So here is a collection, in this one in particular, is a collection of villages where our sites are a little bit better suited for the production of wine. Not to say the other ones aren't good, it's just that these are better. And when we have this classification, so you'll notice we have Cotes du Rhone on the label, but it also says the word village or village. So this is a collection of villages that as a unit the group has decided that these are better sites. And when we have that on the label, it's indicating a little bit of a higher quality compared to our entry Cotes du Rhone.
And already you get it. You get more concentration. It's a more finessed finish. It's less juicy and more complex. These differences in kind of levels are taken very, very seriously by the French. In fact, I'm sure they've come to blows many times in deciding exactly what qualifies as Cotes du Rhone Village versus regular Cotes du Rhone. It's like that Russian doll metaphor where the big one is the Cotes du Rhone, then you peel off one, you got Cotes du Rhone Village, and then finally the tiny little one in the middle would be the Châteauneuf, which is more prestigious and I guess harder to get to. That's where the analogy stops.
With the dollars.
With the dollars.
A few more dollars to get there. But I think that immediately we're seeing this kind of layers of flavor starting to develop. The structure, the mouth, the tannins are a little bit firmer. Whereas I think like the Cotes du Rhone, have a glass, it's nice and juicy, but the Village, yes, I want to have a glass of it, but I also think I'm starting to think about food a bit more concentration. I still get that nice juicy quality of Grenache, but then there's just something else there. There's a little mineral note.
there's a structure to it. So this can handle red meat if you want. And certainly in the Southern Rhone, all the lamb in the world ends up there, I think, because I didn't think they'd have any lamb left after I had gone home. Because I had it every single day, twice. But this would go well with that, especially like the braised lamb, not necessarily like grilled. But yeah, well structured, good with good protein.
And before we move on, I just want to touch a little bit on the Famille Perrin. We have a little bit of a love affair with Famille Perrin here at Everything Wine. They make exceptional wines, all the way from La Vieille Ferme, which is a generic, it's actually on the outskirts of Cotes du Rhone appellation, all the way up to the very top examples coming from Châteauneuf-du-Pape. And so you'll find many, many wines from them in our stores, but they're all really great for their kind of tier. They hit all the right checkpoints.
Yeah, from top to bottom.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we're going to move to next a very special place. So we've talked about this identification of villages within the Cotes du Rhone. Now, some of these villages have the ability to write their name on the label. And so they have kind of reached the next level of village classification. And the most famous of these named villages is Châteauneuf-du-Pape.
For a long time, that was the only known village in the Southern Rhone, really. It was always been the most famous, put them on the map. But just in the last 30 years, a lot of the other villages have gotten almost to the same amount of prestige. Gigondas, which is to the east, about it's a half an hour drive. In the valley floor, you have Vaquera, there's Queyran, Saint-Sobre. I think Plan de Dieu just got its own AOC. I know I'm missing some. Lirac on the other side of the river. And they all have their own characteristics that they had to kind of submit to apply for their own appellation. But Châteauneuf is still the most famous, and generally speaking, the most expensive.
And I would also say most expensive when we think about the whole world of wine and how much you can spend on a bottle. Châteauneuf-du-Pape is still extremely reasonable. We're starting around 60, 70. 100 would be kind of an average, maybe. We don't get really, really high above 100 from what I can recall.
No, you start getting into the reserve tiers and the prestige tiers.
Yes, yeah. You can get to 200 plus, but...
Even with the prestige tiers, it's adorable compared to Bordeaux.
Yes, exactly. So when we're talking about the top wines from the region, we're still looking at, in context, some great values, I find. Yeah. Oh, this one just has such a lovely bouquet. A little bit of a floral note, some rose petal, that bright strawberry. So remember, we're still talking about the same blend of grape varieties, predominantly Grenache, some Syrah. I'm not sure the complete exact breakdown of the Châteauneuf-du-Pape. There's many grapes that could go in.
I believe this one is largely Grenache based. You get that nice kind of licorice note too, as well as some. You said garrigue. There's that going on in there. Yeah. For pairing purposes, all three of these, any dish that you have which has lots of green herbs, whether dried or fresh, these are wines that pair perfectly with that. And the cuisine there is there's a lot of herbs done there too.
Yeah, in the Southern Rhone, we have this garrigue. If you're not familiar with that term, it's kind of this collection of southern herbs of rosemary. It's those woody herbs, rosemary and thyme and lavender. Think of herbs de Provence. You can smell that in the air when you're there. And that really kind of fills the wine. And so I like to use that word as a description. This also has some really, I can still taste the wine.
Yeah.
I've had a sip, I've been talking for a while, and I think that's really kind of what elevates these higher quality cru vineyards. We have this concentration of flavor, this lingering flavor, this complexity. I'm starting to get a bit of a savory note, the dried herbs.
There is a definite, with each stage you go up, there's definitely a higher quality, higher concentration, higher length at the finish. And again, it's not that these aren't good, this is best, but it's not that these ones aren't good, but just in the context of what you're paying for it, I think these illustrate that perfectly.
Absolutely. Gosh, it's just such a nice, like, silky texture as well. And you're right, I love the description of the pyramid. You know, this is your Wednesday, this is your Thursday, this is your Saturday. I mean, I would love to open this on Tuesday, but I probably would be opening that one.
Well, if you leave that one in the fridge for a couple days because you forget about it, you're not going to be that sad. I'd be very sad. Very, very sad.
Very sad.
I wouldn't age this one. I think this one is firing all thrusters right now. Generally speaking, the fruit's great. The tannins are there, but they're just supporting. There's a lot of, for instance, like certain vintages of Beaucastel, the Elo de Jupiter, a lot of them do need to age just to soften up the structure. This is velvety. Like, this is drinking perfectly right now.
And that's actually a really good point too. When it comes to the classifications of Rhone, a lot of the times they are priced accordingly to when you want to drink them, in a sense, right? If you're buying this $20 Cotes du Rhone, don't wait, just open it. It's going to be delicious and fresh and fruity, and that's the intention, and that's what the winemaker really intended you to do. The village can kind of go in between. It depends on, I would say majority of it's going to be consumed within a short period of time, but it does have some structure that if you wanted to experiment with cellaring wines, that would be a really good opportunity. I know with their named villages, the Caran or the Vinsaube, we've seen the potential for some time in bottle. And then Châteauneuf-du-Pape is when you want to drink it. Is it now? Does it need time? But it is something that you might want to think about.
I mean, Grenache tends to shed fruit earlier than other grapes, so I don't want to keep it past 10 years past the harvest date, only because I love that fruit. I don't want it to go anywhere. But I mean, we cellar wine to make it better. So if it's already really good and you don't feel it really has anything left to do, go nuts. It's your wine, right? Like, don't feel bound by the occasion of it. You know.
Absolutely. The best time to drink wine is when you want to.
Yeah, like if a really good episode of TV came on, you can't say, oh no, it's not the occasion for a really good episode of TV, right? Like you'd drink it, or you'd watch it rather. So with this, you know, if it's Tuesday, it's a good Tuesday.
Absolutely.
Happy Tuesday.
Great Tuesday, happy Tuesday.